So friends, welcome to the 9th module of the course in Aesthetics and Philosophy for the PG program in Visual Arts. I am Deepak Kannal, as you know, Professor in Art History and Aesthetics in MS University of Baroda. Today, we are going to discuss one of the most complex, but at the same time, most exciting theory in Indian aesthetics. We talked about Rasa, we talked about Riti, we talked about Alankara, but Dhwani is a very complex theory and we should be extremely proud about it for one reason, that this theory has inspired the modern linguistics to a great extent. This theory initially was proposed by a linguist. Rather, because of this theory, Indian aesthetics was considered as Vyakaranasya Puchya, the extension of grammar. Because initially this theory was put forward by a linguist called Bhartrhari sometime in 1st century BC or a little earlier. We are not very sure about the exact date. As I told you earlier while talking about the history of Indian aesthetics, this particular scholar's date is debatable because it seems that there are three scholars by the same name. We are talking about is a linguist and he perhaps goes back to the pre-Christian era. There is another scholar who seems to be working in 3rd century AD and his major work is Subhashita Trai. There is one more scholar by the same name, Bhartrhari, who was perhaps living in 12th century and later on he embraced Natha Sampradaya. He and his wife Mainavati embraced Natha Sampradaya. Because this name kept appearing in Indian history time and again, the dating became a little confusing, but now I think that confusion is over and we can comfortably place this scholar in the pre-Christian era, sometime between 1st century BC to 3rd century BC. That is the time which is proposed by most of the scholars. This scholar is a linguist, not a grammarian. We have been talking about Panini, if you remember. Panini is a grammarian and Bhartrhari is a linguist. He studies language, not grammar. Language, what is language? How would you define language? Language is a communicative system, a significatory system, which tries to communicate not only the thought, but also the feelings. We could have called it a language. Sometimes it is possible to communicate something with the help of signaling system also. When you stop at the traffic signal, even the traffic lamp gives you some messages, but that is not a language, that is just a signal. Language is a very complex phenomenon where you can express not only the thought, but also the intricate feelings. And sometimes what you express and what is being understood could be different from each other. Have you noticed it? That sometimes you pass a sarcastic comment and the other person understands it. So what you say is different and what you mean is different, and surprisingly the other person understands it. This is which means that language is a very complex phenomenon. How do we understand language? When I am talking to you, since last 3 days we have been interacting with each other. Now I refer to something which I talked about 3 days back or 2 days back, and you immediately remember it. Now when I start talking, I say V, then I say E, then I say N, then I say, are you realizing that I am making noises? Actually, the linguists, they speak about speech, not the script. The script comes much later. Script is not important. The real language lies in the speech. We speak. That speaking is important. So when I speak to each other, what exactly do? I make several sounds, and each sound is converted into a word. Dhwani means sound. You know, dhwani is sound. So ultimately, what is language? Language is a set of various dhwanis. It's a complex combination of various sounds. So I am making sounds. Now those sounds are associated with some meaning, and with the help of those sounds, you understand the meaning of that word. Then one word is associated with the second word, with the third word, with the fourth word, with the fifth word. Then it becomes a sentence. You derive the meaning of the sentence. Then we go further, another sentence, third sentence, fifth sentence, 10 sentences. All those 10 sentences make a paragraph, you derive the meaning of the paragraph. Are you realizing that using language is such a complex procedure? Now, we seldom realize that by using language, the human brain has created such a complex system of communication that we can communicate whatever we want to in this language. Of course, some of these things can be communicated beyond that. Like the language is used to communicate those things, but the words don't express it. There are things which are beyond the words, and we can also express things which are beyond the words, don't we? So the theory of Dhvani exactly tries to inquire into this phenomenon, the phenomena of language. And then in 9th century, Anandavardhana exploited this theory for aesthetic purpose. So initially this theory was introduced as a theory in grammar, as a theory in linguistics, and later on it was exploited for aesthetic purpose in 9th century. Precisely something similar has happened in the West also. In 20th century, Ferdinand de Saussure introduced a similar linguistic system in the West, and then the same system was exploited for aesthetic thinking at a later juncture. This parallelism, this coincidence is very, very interesting. Let's talk about it later. So what Bhartrhari is known as a perspectivist. He is a perspectivist scholar. What is perspectivist? He believes that the truth keeps changing according to your perception. When you look at this camera from that side, it would look different. From my side, it is looking different. From your view, it is looking different. The same is true about the world. The same is true about the truth. Your position and your perspective changes the truth, changes the reality. Understanding this and accepting this is perspectivism. So, Bhartrhari is basically a perspectivist philosopher and a perspectivist linguist. So we should keep this in mind. These are very simple things, but very interesting things to understand, because many a times we fail to give a thought to all these intricacies. We use language, but we seldom give a thought to the very notion called language. We don't realize that we are using such a complex system. So only after reading Bhartrhari you will realize that we are using a very, very complex medium. So here he is known for his Trikandi. Trikandi is a set of 3 books. It's a trilogy, and the first one is known as Agama Samuchchaya. Agama Samuchchaya. The second one is known as Vakyapadiyam, and the third one is Prakirna. We are not mainly concerned about Agama Samuchchaya or Prakirna. We are concerned with Vakyapadiyam, because that is the book which tries to concentrate on the problem of languages. Now in Vakyapadiyam, he tries to understand the relationship between the Pada and the Vakya. What is a Pada and what is a Vakya? Pada is a meaningful voice. A meaningful voice. Now we are talking about Dhvani, and we are talking about Shabda also. Shabda also means Dhvani. Shabda also means sound. Many times we say that the night was really silent. तो हम कहते हैं कि निशब्द रात्रि थी. Shabda also means sound. But when this Shabda becomes meaningful, it becomes a Pad. You make many sounds, but every sound doesn't have a meaning. There are some sounds which have meaning. Those meaningful sounds come together, make a Pada, and these Padas come together to formulate a Vakya. So what exactly the relationship between the Pada and the Vakya? And how do we derive the meaning out of the Vakya is one of the problems which Bhartrhari is trying to. Now you might be wondering that why are we discussing these things? Every statement that you do in your medium, whether it is painting, whether it is music, or whether it is sculpture, in a way it is a sentence, isn't it? It is a statement. So those statements also have a similar logic. So we can perhaps understand our language better. Each of us are using different language. Some of you are using the language of music, some of you are using the language of dance, some of you are using the language of sculpture or painting. But language is a language. Now of course this language again is a very broad term, and every language does not have similar characteristics. the visual language doesn't have grammar. The dance language has. The music language has. So every language doesn't have grammar, or if they have grammar, the nature of the grammar may vary from language to language, but at the same time the basic concept remains the same, and that is why the linguistic theories can really help us to understand our own expression and to enrich our own expression. So that is why we are trying to understand this theory. So this Shabda Dhatu Samiksha, he calls it Shabda Dhatu Samiksha. So we are going to discuss initially the Shabda Dhatu Samiksha and then its extension to the world of art. So as I told you that he is a perspectivist. In Sanskrit it is called Trayanti. There are Vedantis who believe in absolute truth, and there are Trayantis who believe in perspectivism. So Bhartrhari basically is a Trayanti, and he has a different kind of epistemology to understand the language. So in cognition, when we cognize something, ultimately why do we use language? We use language to cognize something, to understand something. This cognition, what kind of cognition it is? The other scholars, quite a few scholars, including Prabhakar and many scholars who are his contemporaries, or some of them are slightly later to him, they believe that the meaning of the sentence is understood sequentially. The meaning is understood sequentially. When I am talking to you, you are learning the meaning of it. I utter a sentence, you understand the meaning of it. Then I utter the second sentence, you understand the meaning of the second sentence, the third sentence, the fourth sentence, fifth sentence. This is how we understand the language. But very surprisingly, Bhartrhari is of the opinion that this is not true. He says that it appears to be a sequential understanding, but many a times it happens that I might try to communicate something to you, and in my last sentence I might undermine my own expression. If you remember our previous session, I was talking to you about Virodhabhas. I told you that the artist said, the poet said that people say that there is no dearth of anything in your kingdom, but I noticed that there is dearth of copper and steel. Now what he said and what he meant was something different. He said something and he meant something else, which means that the sequential understanding of that language was not useful over there, because all the things which were said sequentially were undermined and exploded towards the end of it. Some new meaning came out of it. When I tell you that हाँ पता है आप तो बहुत अकलमंद है भाई, तो do I really mean कि आप अकलमंद है? What I mean to say is तुम्हें इतनी भी अकल क्यों नहीं है? So how, which means that the sequential understanding is not useful every time. Sequentially you understood something, and towards the end of the sentence you realized that what I mean was something different. Which means that the understanding of language is not sequential, it is intuitive. You understand language in a jiffy, like an explosion. The meaning, जैसे as you switch on the light and the room gets enlightened. Similarly, the meaning enlightens your mind like he calls it sport. It enlightens your mind in a jiffy. Till the whole thing gets complete, you do not understand the meaning. Only after completion of that, you simultaneously understand the meaning of that vakya. But then that vakya again it may get supplemented by another vakya, and the next vakya might undermine the first vakya. So when it comes to Mahavakya, a vakya, a similar sentence is understood simultaneously, but there are so many sentences which come together, and perhaps when all these sentences come together, the total thesis which I am trying to put forward might change the meaning of every sentence that I spoke earlier. Are you getting the meaning? It's quite simple that way. But he has observed something immensely interesting, that the cognition of language is a simultaneous process. The cognition of language is an intuitive process according to Bhartrhari. Bhartrhari is a very different kind of scholar. We must try to understand him with a. So he believes in Akhandarthavad, and he talks about the Shabda Shakti. Actually, we can speak for hours on cognition, because cognition is a very, very interesting theory, but I don't think it will be possible for us to discuss Bhartrhari in further details, because we also want to bring in Anandavardhana in this discussion. Now, at this juncture, he speaks about the Shabda Shakti. Shabda Shakti, we will talk about Shabda Shakti at a later juncture. Every word, he talks about the potential of the word. And several such words come together when he says that when exactly the words get converted into a Vakya, get converted into a statement. Because in language, what exactly is the basic unit of language? When we say language, what is the basic unit of language? Obviously, many of you would say word. भाषा किस किस चीजों की बनती है? शब्दों की बनती है. भाषा शब्दों की नहीं बनती है. Because if we put words together, only words don't make language. If you learn the dictionary by heart, you cannot be a master of the language. The basic unit of language is Vakya, not Shabda. Because Vakya is a meaningful expression. Shabda is not an expression. Shabda is only a tool. Shabda is only a kind of, when you make a mosaic, Shabda is like that piece which you join together. And only when you join several such pieces together, the shape takes place. The shape is important, not the piece. You get my point? So the basic unit of expression, the basic unit of language is Vakya, not Shabda. Bhartrhari is the first person to observe this. And to consider it in a Vakya, there are three important things which must be taken into consideration. One is Yogyata. Yogyata, that is parity. Padarthanam paraspar sambandhe bada bhav. That is how he describes it. Padarthanam paraspar sambandhe bada bhav. The words which come together must have parity with each other. If you put together two words which don't have anything to do with, कि मैंने अगर कहा कि पर्दा और अमिताभ बच्चन, it doesn't make any sense. All the words which are used in a sentence must have relationship with each other. That is called yogyata, parity. This parity is the first prerequisite of language. The examples which you will find in the books on linguistics is payasa sinchati. If I use a sentence, this is a sentence can be of two words also. वाक्य के लिए बहुत लंबा ये होना जरूरी नहीं है, दो शब्दों का भी वाक्य हो सकता है ना. पयसा सिंचति. पय is water. Sprinkling with water. Does it make sense? Fine. It is a vakya. It is a meaningful sentence. But if I say Agnina sinchati, I sprinkled it with fire. Now this doesn't become a vakya. It might become a statement, but then it will have to be interpreted differently. But otherwise, in common language, if I say Agnina sinchati, Agni and Sinchana, they do not have parity with each other. They do not have any relationship with each other, and that is why it becomes a meaningless statement. To make a meaningful statement, the words of the sentence must have parity with each other. This is the first requisite of making sentences and making meaningful conversation. The other important factor is akanksha, desire. This is very interesting. He believes that in modern linguistics also, this is very interesting, that the word desire, if you see the modern linguistics, there are people like Julia Kristeva or Norman Bryson who are considered to be very important modern linguistics and modern linguists, and they use the same word, desire. He uses the word akanksha, which in English can be translated as desire, and they use exactly the same word to explain this particular phenomenon. A language has a desire. Every word that comes in the sentence has a desire for another to. Sometimes I really get tempted to borrow things from other languages than English. Please allow me to do so. There is a beautiful share by, I think it is by, most probably it is by Mir. He says, अपनी तकमील कर रहा हूं मैं, वरना मुझको तो तुझसे प्यार नहीं. अपनी तकमील कर रहा हूं मैं, वरना मुझको तो तुझसे प्यार नहीं. आई एम ट्राइंग टू कंप्लीट माई सेल्फ, अदरवाइज आई डोंट लव यू. So it's very interesting. Every sentence is trying to complete itself. There is a desire of being complete. Every man, every person, every sentence desires to become complete. This desire of being complete is very, very important, and this desire leads to the next word of that sentence. Otherwise the sentence doesn't become a sentence. I don't know whether any of you have attended a mushaira. Have you attended any Urdu mushaira? For people who attend it very regularly, they understand this notion of desire very well. I'll give you an example of a very popular sher which is known to each of you. कि when the shayer says, "Dile nada tujhe hua kya hai?" and when he utters the next sentence, कि आखिर इस दर्द की, the whole crowd will say दवा क्या है. Why? They understood that this statement is desiring the word दवा. बात समझ में आ रही है कि यहाँ पे आकांक्षा जो है उस शब्द को आकांक्षा इसी शब्द की है. दिले नादा तुझे हुआ क्या है, आखिर इस दर्द की, उस दर्द के लिए आकांक्षा किसकी है? दवा की ही तो आकांक्षा है. वो आकांक्षा पूरी होनी चाहिए. In sentence, this akanksha is very, very important. Every sentence has an akanksha to get complete. It has a desire to become complete. So initially we talked about the parity, and then we talked about the akanksha, that is the desire which wants to be complete. ठीक है? There is third thing which also needs to be discussed, which is a very physical thing. The first two things are more conceptual. The third element is slightly physical, which is sannidhi or sanidhya. And then say go home after half an hour. Will you understand it? So there has to be sanidhya. These words must have proper distance. Sometimes there is another example, visual example, which I can give you. That if you keep a pair of chappal at a distance of 5 feet, will it look like a pair? Or if you a pair of chappal the other way round, ulta karke rakh diya, so you will feel uncomfortable, don't you? Because they do not have proper sannidhi in it. They do not have proper distance in it. If I keep one chappal in this room and the other chappal in this room, it doesn't become a pair. To become a pair, they will have to be put together. The same is true about language. To make a sentence, all the words will have to be put together. They must be in sanidhya with each other. If the sannidhi is not maintained, the sentence doesn't become meaningful. So what did we derive? Initially, there has to be parity between words. They should not be absurdly put together, which do not have any relationship with each other. Secondly, each word should have a desire for the next word to get converted into a meaningful statement. That desire is very, very important. And thirdly, it is the sannidhi, where the proximity, if I want to translate it properly, the proximity is important. All these things together make a sentence. So what we gathered is it is possible to communicate the meaning through these three things, that is yogyata, akanksha and sanidhya. All of them together is known as tatparya vritti. Tatparya vritti. So did you realize one thing? That the word here is only being treated as a signifier because the word doesn't have meaning. It points at a meaning. It points at a meaning. It is a signifier, and what is being signified is the meaning. So that is why the word is kavya sharir or bhasha sharir, and the meaning is the atma of it. It is the soul. Word is like a body. It is exactly this analogy is a beautiful analogy. The word is like a body. It is dead if the soul is not there. If the meaning is not there, the word is dead. So all these things together, it becomes a vakya, and the vakya can be understood with the help of these three things: yogyata, akanksha and sanidhya. This becomes tatparya vritti. Tatparya vritti is derivation of meaning, because again, the most complex thing about the language is even if you know all the words and its meanings, as I mentioned earlier, the final meaning of that statement may not necessarily conform to the literal meaning of every word. The literal meaning could be different, the Vyangyartha will be different. The implied meaning would be totally different. This is what Bhartrhari told us. He also talked about some very interesting things while talking about Shabda Shakti. Shabda Shakti is a very interesting part of this theory. You know that every word has various potentials, words and the usage of words. He believes that there are three potentials of words. The most important and the most common of them is Abhidha. If you remember, we used this word earlier also while talking about Bhattanayaka. Do you remember we talked about Abhidha, Bhavana and Charvana? Abhidha is literal meaning. So Abhidha is the real power, the central power or the principal power of the word. Now that is the principal meaning or Mukhyartha, Abhideyartha, principal meaning. Now every word has a meaning and that meaning is found in the dictionary. Now who do you think gave meanings to these words? How these meanings came into existence? Great scholars came together and they prepared thousands of words and also the meanings, and then they prepared a dictionary, and that dictionary is in use today. Is that how it must have happened? How the language came into existence, how the words came into existence, how the words and the meanings were related together. What do you think could be the possibility? Bhartrhari says that it is the Sanketa that plays a role in it. Sanketa is pact. Sanketa is agreement. हम दोनों में एक संकेत है, नहीं शाम को 5 बजे वहां मिलने का हमारा संकेत है. तो संकेत is agreement between two people, pact between two people. Language is a product of Sanketa. But initially, it is not language. It is just an idiom. It is just a communication. Every communication system, every significatory system is not language. Language is a very complex process. As I told you that even signaling has a potential of sending meaningful signals. The signaling system, but that is not language. Language is very, very complex. So here, initially, when two people or more than two people come together and unanimously decide to identify the meaning of a particular sound. I don't even say word, because it has yet to become a word now. If I want to, now the examples which I am giving you is from 20th century, and that is why initially you will have to imagine how it must have happened. Now in your classes, there are some people, we were talking just since yesterday, we have been talking about Badal, and we are trying to associate Badal with the rains. Now whenever you will talk about Badal, probably you will think of this man. But only those people who are present over here will have that. So if you are walking on the street and if you see the clouds approaching, probably you might say कि अपना दोस्त आ गया, अपना दोस्त आ गया. Now the third person who is not present over here will not understand it. You will understand it because you know that Badal is associated with the cloud. There are so many things which you do, and you have names for your teacher. Two of you who are very close friends who do not like a teacher, perhaps whenever you want to refer to that teacher, you give a name to him कि X ने ऐसे कहा था, या तो नहीं कि अपने there are several names. Perhaps I always tell my students that since she was my student and her classmates used to call her Didi because she was elder to them. They used to call me Jijaji. I didn't know it. Nobody knew it. Whenever they wanted to speak about me in her presence, they used to call me Jijaji because they did not want her to know it. Now this Jijaji is a word which was created by a group of people as for the purpose of communication. Now this word, this meaning was accepted by two or more than two people. Only after that it becomes meaningful. If I decide to use a word, if I create a word and give a meaning to it, it doesn't become meaningful. it becomes meaningful only when the other person also agrees with me. You get my point? When I create a word and if the other person approves of it, for two of us it becomes meaningful, not for the rest of the people. Then the third person may join you. For the third person also it becomes meaningful. For the fourth person it becomes meaningful. For the fifth person it becomes meaningful. And gradually it becomes a part of the mainstream language. So what is happening? Giving sanction to that usage is most important. There are so many words which were introduced in our languages in recent times. Now, Doordarshan. Doordarshan was not known to us. But such words are created words. These words are imposed on the language. These words are translations. Why Doordarshan? Tele and vision. So they translated television as Doordarshan and imposed that word on the language. I am not talking of those words. Those words are foreign words. They are pushed into the language. The natural development of language is based on the pact of two people, and that is why there are so many words like I always give examples like panga. Now, when the word panga was introduced, perhaps it did not have any meaning. But some people started using it, and now panga perhaps was used in the northern part of the country initially. The South Indians never understood what panga was, because it was a pact which was created by the northern people. Gradually now, if you go to Bangalore, and Bangalore people also use the word panga. वो बंदा ऐसा है, now even the Kannadigas have started using the word banda. Or there are words like mandavli or locha, which are from Gujarat and Maharashtra, have become a part of now Delhi language today. So initially, the word is created and accepted by a small group of people. There is no logic behind it. Only the agreement between two people is the logic, and on the basis of that logic, the word is gradually accepted by people. If it is accepted by the larger number of people using that language, it becomes a part of the mainstream language. Otherwise, it is thrown away. It remains a sanketitartha. So, sanketitartha, sanket is the beginning of any meaningful conversation, right? But later on, aikamatya is more important. Aikamatya comes from ekamat, unanimity. All of us will have to accept the word and its meaning unanimously. If we do not do that, the word doesn't become meaningful. To give very simple, if you decide to call this object as glass, and if मुझे ये कैमरा अच्छा नहीं लगता है, मैं इसको glass कहूँगी, नहीं चलेगा ना. You will not be able to communicate with others, because when you will say that please hand over that glass to me, probably you will be handed over something else than the things which you wanted to. When all the people will accept it, sometimes it happens. In America, petrol is called gas, or the lift is called elevator. So all the Americans decided to do that, and then the word was accepted. But you alone cannot do it. This unanimity, this aikamatya is most important in accepting a word in the mainstream language. This is a prerequisite for abhida, and that is why it becomes a principal meaning. But here, Bhartrhari comes up with a very, very interesting observation. He says that this process of abhida is contractual. The relationship between the word and the meaning is not a natural relationship, because it is created. It is created by all of us. So it is not a natural relationship. If it would have been a natural relationship, there would not have been more than one language. If the relationship between the object and the word, or the word and the meaning, would have been natural and intrinsic, then there would not have been so many languages. There are so many languages because there are so many groups of people, and these groups are creating different words. Do you get my point? Which means that this relationship is a legal relationship, is a contractual relationship. It is a contract. All the people who spoke English had a contract to call that liquid as petrol. But the people of America broke that contract and decided to call it gas. Are you getting the point? It is a contract. It is actually a legal contract. This legality is a social legality. It's a different kind of legality. But this is a contractual relationship, a legal relationship, not a natural relationship. It is almost like a marriage. I always say that it can be compared with the relationship of the nuptial relationship, the marital relationship. The husband and wife are not naturally related to each other like brother and sister. Brother and sister are intrinsically related, naturally related. However deeply they love each other, the relationship is legal. The relationship is contractual. Marriage is a contract. They accept the contract unanimously to stay together all their life. It is a contractual relationship. Now the most interesting thing is what Bhartrhari says, that normally we believe that language gives meanings to words. All this discussion must have led you to an understanding that language gives meanings to words. But Bhartrhari says that language doesn't give meanings to words, language restricts the meanings of the words. Language restricts the meanings of the words. Because if I go back to my analogy once again of marriage, a young girl who wants to get married, whom she can get married with? She can get married with any person on earth. Right? If a girl wants to get married, she can choose anybody. She has, at least legally, she has a right to marry. Whether the other person wants to marry her or not is a different thing. But she has a right, she has a legal right to marry any person on earth, any unmarried person on earth. Right? But the moment she gets married to one person, the possibility of getting married with the rest of the people is eliminated. Now she cannot get married with any other person. You get my point? Now she is committed to one person. The relationship between the word and the meaning is exactly the same. The moment the word is associated with a particular meaning, the possibility of associating that word with other meanings is eliminated. Now they are married to each other. उनकी शादी हो गई, वो शब्द की और वो अर्थ की एक दूसरों के साथ शादी हो गई, अब उनको एक दूसरे के साथ लॉयल रहना पड़ेगा. But at the same time, you can have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Similarly, the words can have some subsidiary meanings. The word mouse, what does that mean? The word mouse means a black animal with a long tail, which you saw yesterday over here. But the same word is also being used for that object, which is connected with the computer. So sometimes a word can have more than one meaning. A word can also have an affair, not only marriage. So it can have some subsidiary meanings also, but that is a rare case. Otherwise, the relationship between the word and the meaning is a strong contractual relationship which is fairly loyal. And we respect this loyalty, and that is why we can speak that language. Otherwise, it will be practically impossible for us to communicate with each other in that particular language. If we want to use that language, we will have to regard, we will have to respect, we will have to honor this contract. Only those people who honor this contract will be allowed to use this language, otherwise they will not have access to that particular language. This is Abhida. Abhida is the principal meaning, and the principal meaning is contractual, and it has a legal contractual relationship, nuptial relationship with the meaning. The relationship between the word and the meaning is of this kind. But this is not enough. Abhida, though, is the backbone of any lingual communication, though it is the foundation of any lingual communication. Because without Abhida, we cannot communicate. If we do not know the meanings of those words, it is practically impossible for us to communicate with each other. So, Abhida is a prerequisite of any language. Language is impossible without Abhida, but Abhida is not language. This is very interesting. Abhida is essential for any language, but only Abhida is not enough for language. It can help you to communicate information, it can help you to communicate thought, but there are so many other things which the mankind wants to communicate to each other. The human mind is a very, very complex phenomenon, and there are so many intricacies which we want to communicate to each other. Obviously, this simple tool called Abhida is not adequate to to communicate those complexities to other people. So naturally, we will have to go beyond Abhida and enter into another possibility of words. There are two more possibilities which Bhartrhari has discussed, that is Lakshana and Vyanjana, which we will discuss in the next session.